Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jen Trepic, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. This week, we're talking about quinoa. Okay, wait. This makes me think of, what are the commercials where like the guy is trying to help people not turn into their parents?
Yes. Liberty Mutual?
Right? Whatever.
Nope. Progressive.
Right. And it's like there's one where they're all trying to figure out how to pronounce quinoa. Yeah. Right. The one's like Quinoa Joaquin, and it's like, no, it's quinoa. Okay. Anyway, so I feel like it came to popularity. It was like maybe like early 2000s, maybe like 2010-ish, right? And it came to popularity because it's naturally gluten-free. And I feel like it coincided with the flare-up, no pun intended, of everybody recognizing, gluten intolerance and celiac and all those things. So the truth is, though, quinoa is not new. It is an ancient grain. Like I said, naturally gluten-free, which makes it appealing. It's also really easy to grow, which helped in its popularity, I think. And it is a bit more nutrient dense than grains. So it falls into a category of grains called a pseudo-cereal. And basically, it's not a grain, it's a seed, but it's used like oats and barley. So it's used and prepared similar to a grain. So that's how we think of it. But really what we're having is the seed. So I mentioned before that it's more nutrient dense than grains, right? So let's take a look at that. So 1 cup of cooked quinoa has about 222 calories, 8 grams of protein, about 3.6 grams of fat, 39 grams of carbs, and 5 grams of fiber. In the micronutrient category, right, we get folate, which is a B vitamin, B6, vitamin E, iron, zinc, potassium, phosphorus, and then quite a bit of copper, manganese, and magnesium. So we talked about micronutrients earlier in this episode, right? And that also kind of felt like reading the periodic table of elements. So I'm having a moment over here. Right. Okay. So you'll see in the grocery store, quinoa comes in a bunch of different colors. We really see the same nutrition no matter the color. So whatever makes you happy, go with it. And then when we look at that nutrition, right, there's a decent amount of fiber and protein. And I often think of grains as just inefficient sources of nutrition. Like it takes a lot of the grain to get to the quantity of protein and fiber that we'd be looking for. So quinoa is more efficient in that way. And certainly more than grains that would be used in the same places that we could use quinoa. And when we connect to the health benefits, right, we know protein is going to help keep us satisfied, as is the fiber, but we'll come back to the fiber in a second. Quinoa is also referred to as what's called a nearly complete protein. So technically it contains all 9 essential amino acids, but it's a little light on the lysine. So like experts argue like it's not quite perfect. So, there's that.
Close, but not quite there.
Right. 8 grams in the full cup. Right. So perspective, most of us think about protein in terms of ounces, not grams, right? So 7 grams is about 1 ounce of a cooked meat. So that cup of quinoa, right, is pretty decent. Now, we may not eat the whole cup, but we can balance it out. Like P.S., if you took quinoa and eggs and made a pancake, like talk about a killer protein pancake.
Yep. Or quinoa and garbanzo beans, also fantastic.
Yes. Also, like if you did a half a cup of quinoa, some nutritional yeast and veggies, that would be like a killer snack, Anyway, we'll get to on the carbs and the fiber front. So yes, like the 30 whatever grams of carbs is higher than we would typically say in a food, but it's in the context and category of grains or seeds, right? So we're kind of not going to get around that in that category of food, right? So we look at things as a whole. Maybe you consider the quantity as part of that, or how do we balance the plate and look at other sources of protein and fiber to help balance that, right? Now, on the fiber front, quinoa has more than many grains, right? Like for perspective, the quinoa in the cup had 5 grams of fiber. Brown rice that everybody loves and is also gluten-free is like 3.5 grams of fiber in a full cup.
Yep.
So it just gives us some perspective there. And then when we think of fiber, right, we can think prebiotic, supporting our gut microbiome and our gut health. We think digestive support, elimination, keeping us full and satisfied for longer, balancing blood sugar, supporting healthy triglyceride levels, like essentially supporting metabolic health and therefore overall health, like fundamental. Thank you, fiber. Right?
Thank you, fiber. Yep.
Right. And we all know that because we're showing up to salad with a side of fries all the time and we're having these conversations and we know that we can connect those dots. And then, of course, the research, what research there is on quinoa, supports it. So interesting study in 2020. It was small. It was like about 40 people. And participants had a half ounce of a quinoa flour-based biscuit every day for 4 weeks, which is a lot, but that's whatever. This is their study. And they compared the blood work to people who ate a wheat-based biscuit, right? So the quinoa biscuit eaters had significantly greater reductions in LDL, right? Or low-density lipoprotein, so the bad cholesterol in air quotes. Greater reductions in, so the bad cholesterol, total cholesterol, and body weight compared to the wheat biscuit eaters. So
that's fascinating.
Right? And there are a lot of factors involved in this, right? Like I wouldn't necessarily say it's like the quintessential amazing study, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
And there are some other studies too, the results make sense given the protein and the fiber, right? The metabolic health support. On the micronutrient front, quinoa offers a lot of those vitamins and minerals that we see people, especially people who eat gluten-free and people who eat entirely plant-based tend to be lacking, right? So that's really like the folate, the zinc, and the magnesium. So we're getting that from the quinoa. So it's sort of, ticking all these boxes, if you will. I think it's also worth noting that quinoa does give us some antioxidants and other plant compounds. So the main flavonoids in quinoa are quercetin and camphorol. And both are pretty well studied. Like we've actually done nutrition nuggets before on quercetin. So look that one up, guys. But essentially as antioxidants, they're helping protect our cells from free radical damage, right? Which is basically protecting us from inflammation, which is protecting us from essentially all symptoms, illness, and disease.
Yep.
So by including nutritious foods like quinoa, right, we have some real benefit. Now, before we get to using the quinoa, I do want to point out that quinoa does contain a couple of things that would be called anti-nutrients, right? In particular, saponins, tannins, and phytic acid. So we've talked about anti-nutrients before. It bears repeating. Yes, anti-nutrients are basically compounds that bind to minerals, in this case, like iron and magnesium, and then inhibit our body's absorption of those minerals. However, rinsing, soaking, or sprouting the quinoa before you cook it reduces these anti-nutrients and allows us to absorb the minerals better than if we didn't do the extra step. So we don't have to worry about it if we know how to prepare it, right? Another one that's also worth noting is oxalates. So I'll put oxalates on my list to do a separate dedicated nutrition nugget. We've mentioned them before, but essentially if you're prone to kidney stones, you'll want to watch your oxalates, okay? All right, all that said, we can easily add quinoa. Anytime you use a grain, you could swap it or swap some of it for the quinoa, right? Mix it up. We've also talked about amaranth before. Amaranth is also another pseudo cereal. So all of these options, just allow us to have more variety, right? Think about adding these things into the mix versus like going neck deep into any one, right? So with quinoa, remember, we're going to soak it, sprout it, rinse it first, unless you buy a brand that's already rinsed or is already sprouted. You can make it sweet or savory any time of day. And I think this is also a great one. Like, I'm not big on meal prep, but I think quinoa is a great one to like keep in the fridge and then take a little bit out and then make it if you want it to be sweet or savory or whatever, depending on how you're feeling. So it's also like 20-ish minutes to make. So rinse it. You're going to make it in a 1-to-2 ratio. So 1 part quinoa to 2 parts water. So like 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of water in a pot, on a stove, on high. Let it boil like 15, 20 minutes, essentially till almost all the water is absorbed. You'll like fluff it with a fork and then doctor it up with whatever flavors you want and dig in. I guess a piece to remember here is like it's a seed, so it's going to have more of that like al dente texture, like it's going to have a bite to it. One of my favorites with quinoa is chop up like sun-dried tomato, feta, oregano, olive oil, lemon. You know, if you're an olive person, add some olives and make it a little like Greek-esque. You could do, you know, tomato sauce and basil for Italian, or liquid aminos for like Asian flavor. On the sweet side, do the quinoa with like Greek yogurt, berries, walnuts, maybe some honey, or coconut milk and make it a pudding, right? Like I said, add an egg, turn it into a pancake. There are so many options. The internet can be your friend here as long as you know what you're doing with your quinoa and, you know, having it as part of a well-rounded repertoire of foods. So there you have it, my friends. The rundown on quinoa, your ancient grain that's really a seed, offers us more fiber and protein, vitamins, and minerals than typical grains that are often used in the same place.
That's awesome.
Hallie,
I love it.
what do you want to add? What questions do you have?
Oh man, I learned something. I would love to read that study if you'd send it to me. I learned something. That's fantastic. I love quinoa. It's one of my favorite things. I recommend it all the time. But that was awesome. I don't have anything to add. That was just brilliant. Thank you.
Fun. Yeah. Well, thank you again for being here.
Thank you for having me. Truly, it's been so fun and a total honor.
Likewise. So as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jen Trepeck. Connect with me Instagram or all social media. I am at Jen Trepeck, JENNTREBECK. Our website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Send me a message. I love nothing more than hearing from you, your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. Any of these places, however you reach out, is a great way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Of course, if you are not already a member, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithaside-of-fries to support this podcast, this community, but most importantly, support your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the vegan chickpea soup. So until next week, remember, maybe it's worth asking yourself, what am I nourishing myself with today? And maybe instead of focusing on macros, you consider food as energy, information, medicine, or connection.
Amen.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.